used to work the night shift at a small hotel, a modest 3-story building with about 40 rooms, tucked away in a quiet corner of town. This was about a year ago, but the memory clings to me like a shadow, resurfacing every time I'm alone in the dark. The hotel wasn't busy. On weeknights, we'd have maybe 10 or 15 rooms occupied. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and it was usually uneventful, which suited me just fine. I'd sit behind the front desk, handle some paperwork, check the security cameras occasionally, or watch YouTube on my phone when things were especially slow. The lobby was simple: a front desk, a few couches off to the side with a TV that was rarely on, and a couple of vending machines humming in the corner. Behind the desk was a small office with a computer, a chair, and a glass window that gave me a clear view of the lobby. The front doors locked automatically at night, so guests had to buzz to get in, and I'd press a button to let them through. Most nights, nothing happened after midnight except for the occasional late check-in. But one night, around 11 p.m., something happened that still makes my stomach churn when I think about it. A man buzzed the door, and I let him in. He was in his mid-40s, tall, lean, but not scrawny, wearing jeans, a baseball cap, and carrying a backpack. He approached the desk and asked if we had a room available. I told him we did, quoted the price, and he handed me a credit card. I swiped it, the machine beeped, and I handed him a key card for room 214 on the second floor. As I gave him the key, he looked at me for a moment too long, maybe 3 or 4 seconds. His face blank, eyes locked on mine. It wasn't overtly threatening, but it was enough to make me uneasy. Then he turned and headed toward the elevator. I brushed it off and went back to my phone. Around midnight, I glanced up and saw him back in the lobby. He didn't approach the desk. Instead, he walked past and sat on one of the couches in the lounge area, facing the blank TV screen. I figured he couldn't sleep. Some guests hang out in the lobby when they're restless, so I didn't think much of it at first. But after half an hour, I noticed he was still there, doing nothing. Not scrolling on his phone, not reading, not even dozing, just staring straight ahead at the dark screen. At one point, I got up to grab a water from the vending machine. As I crossed the lobby, I felt his head turn, his eyes following me the entire way. I didn't look at him directly, but the weight of his gaze was unmistakable. It sent a shiver down my spine. Back behind the desk, I tried to shake off the unease and busied myself with the computer, checking the reservation system out of boredom. That's when things got weird. I pulled up the occupied room list, and room 214 was marked vacant. I muttered, "What the hell?" and double-checked, certain I'd just checked him in an hour ago. But the check-in logs showed nothing. No name, no charge, no record of him. I checked the transaction history, and there was no payment from his card either. My heart started racing. I distinctly remembered swiping his card and hearing the machine beep, but the system showed no trace of the transaction. I picked up the phone and called room 214. It rang 10 times. No answer. Then I checked the keycard entry log, which tracks when a room's door is opened. Nothing. No one had entered room 214 that night. The realization hit me like a punch. He never went to the room. I looked over at the lounge area, and there he was, still sitting, still staring at the blank TV. A cold dread settled in my chest. I sat there, debating what to do. Part of me thought the system might have glitched, but the missing entry log and payment made it clear. He wasn't a guest. I watched him for another 15 minutes, my unease growing. Around 1:30 a.m., I mustered the courage to approach him. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He turned his head slowly, his expression blank. "Just couldn't sleep," he said, his voice flat. Then he turned back to the TV. I nodded, muttered something, and retreated to my desk, my hands trembling. By 2 a.m., he was gone from the lounge. My stomach dropped. I scanned the lobby, and there he was, standing at the end of the hallway by the bathrooms, half hidden in the shadows. He was just standing there, motionless. I pretended to work on the computer, stealing glances at him. After a while, he slowly walked back to the lounge and sat down again. I called my manager at home, explaining the situation. She sounded groggy and told me to keep an eye on him and call the police if he did anything threatening. I hung up, thinking it already felt threatening, but I didn't know what else to do. I checked the security cameras. He appeared on the first floor hallway feed, walking to the end, standing there for several minutes, then walking back. Later, he went into the stairwell and stayed for 10 minutes. I had no idea what he was doing. He kept moving, near the vending machines, by the elevators, once standing in a dark corner of the lobby where the light barely reached. Every time I looked up, he was somewhere else, always watching. By 3:30 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I called the non-emergency police line and explained that there was a man in the hotel who wasn't a guest. They said they'd send someone. While I waited, he moved again, this time closer to the desk, standing about 15 feet away, just staring. His eyes didn't blink much, and he didn't speak. I pretended to type, but I could barely breathe. At 3:50 a.m., the buzzer went off. I thought it might be the police, but it was just a late guest. I let them in, and the man's head turned, his eyes tracking the guest across the lobby. It was like he was studying them. A few minutes later, he disappeared again. I checked the cameras and saw him standing outside a guest room door on the first floor, motionless. That's when I called 911. I told the dispatcher he was standing outside a guest room, and I didn't know what he was doing. They said officers were on the way. I kept my eyes on the camera feed. He stood there for 3 minutes, then slowly walked back to the lobby. This time, he approached the desk, leaned over the counter, and asked in a low, unsettling voice if there was any food. I pointed to the vending machines, my voice shaking. He gave a small smile and walked away. I stared at the clock, willing the police to arrive. At 4:10 a.m., 2 officers showed up. I pointed to the man, back in the lounge. They approached him, asked for his ID, and questioned him quietly. Then they escorted him out. One officer returned and explained that the man wasn't a guest. The credit card he'd given me was stolen, and he had no reservation or belongings. He'd been pretending to check in to gain access to the hotel. They charged him with trespassing and theft. After they left, I sat there, shaking, until my shift ended. Every glance at the cameras made me expect to see him again. The thought that he'd been wandering the hotel for hours, watching me, standing outside guest rooms, still haunts me. I'll never know what he was planning, but I know it wasn't good. My name is Meredith, and I'm 24. I used to work the night shift at a tiny gas station off County Road 11, a place so obscure most people only stopped if they were desperate for gas or lost. I took the job because it was quiet, predictable, and I liked the solitude. That is until last year when everything changed. It was a Thursday night around 1 a.m. The air was damp, and the hum of the fluorescent lights was grating on my nerves. I was about to heat up a cinnamon roll when the door chimed. A man walked in, mid-40s, maybe older, wearing a green coat, with messy hair and chapped lips that looked like they hadn't curved into a smile in years. He didn't head for the snacks or coffee like most customers. Instead, he stood near the counters, staring at me with an unsettling familiarity. "Hi," I said, forcing a smile. "You always work this late?" he asked. I blinked. "Yeah, mostly." He smiled faintly. I figured. "I've passed through a few times, noticed it's always you." My stomach twisted, but I kept my tone light. "Oh yeah, small town." Then he said, "Meredith, right?" I froze. I wasn't wearing a name tag. Before I could ask how he knew, he gestured to the whiteboard where I'd written cinnamon coffee in marker. Nice handwriting. Most people dot their I's with circles. You use little slashes. Thoughtful, I didn't respond. He lingered for another minute watching me, then introduced himself as Paul and left without buying anything. After that, he became a regular presence. Not every night, but often enough to feel deliberate. Sometimes he'd come inside. Sometimes he'd sit in his car at the edge of the lot, headlights off. One night, he bought a water and said, "You're quieter tonight." I muttered, "Long shift." He looked around the store like he was cataloging it. "Must get lonely." "Just you out here in the dark, no one for miles." "I'm fine," I said, my voice tight. He leaned on the counter. "You ever get scared, being a woman alone at night?" His tone was neutral, almost curious, which made it worse. "Do you need anything else?" I asked, stepping back. He tilted his head. "You always lock the backroom door. Smart. I noticed you check it around 2 a.m. every night." My stomach churned. "I'll let you get back to it," he said with a soft smile, then left. I started carrying my keys between my fingers when I walked to my car. I hid a tire iron under the counter. I changed my apartment curtains and locked the bathroom door even when I was alone. Some nights he didn't show, but the uncertainty was worse. I never knew when he'd reappear. Then, one night, I found a Polaroid on the counter after a break. It was a close-up of me refilling the windshield washer bin outside, taken that night. The slash dot on the eye in windshield was circled in red ink. The next time he came in, I confronted him. "You need to leave," I said, my voice cracking. "If you stay, I'll call the police." He nodded. "I get it. I've been too forward. You've been following me," I snapped. "I just think you're the kind of person who's used to being misunderstood," he said. "I notice things, like how your shoes are half a size too big, or how your left eyelid twitches when you're tired." I was already dialing 911. He didn't stop me. The police found a notepad in his car filled with my schedule, my clothes, my groceries. One page had my name written repeatedly in tightening loops until it became scribbles. He kept saying, "I'm just a curious guy." I got a restraining order and transferred to a gas station 2 hours away. I don't work nights anymore, but when I see headlights behind me for too long, my neck still tingles, and I hear him saying my name like he'd been practicing it. I'm a 22-year-old woman, and I've been working the overnight shift at a 24-hour gas station for just under 2 months. I cover Thursday through Saturday, while my coworker Max takes Sunday through Wednesday. Last night, something happened that I can't shake. Around 2:30 a.m., Max and his friend Ben, both high on magic mushrooms, stopped by for coffee. They were giggling, which was honestly entertaining. As we chatted, Ben mentioned a car parked in the lot with its lights off but engine running. He'd asked the guy inside, who claimed he was waiting for a DoorDash order. That seemed normal enough, except I hadn't received an order in hours. I'd been cleaning in the back, away from the front windows, so I hadn't noticed the car. We brushed it off, and Max and Ben went outside to smoke a cigar and play with Max's dog. An hour later, they returned for more coffee. Max said the car had been parked in a spot I couldn't see from the register, and the guy had been watching them the whole time, alternating between staring and texting. When Ben confronted him, the guy pretended not to speak English, then switched to English, saying he had the wrong address before speeding off. The car was brand new, with no license plate, and Max noticed a pile of blankets in the back, enough to hide someone. As the guy left, another car, also new and without plates, pulled in with its lights off and followed him out. Max stayed another 15 minutes telling me to be careful. At 6 a.m., he came back, sober, and we talked more. He said the guy's behavior, constantly checking his phone, watching the lot, and eyeing the store entrance, felt off. We agreed that if Max and Ben hadn't been there, something bad might have happened. I carry a knife, but it wouldn't have helped against multiple people. The next night, around 3 a.m., I was mopping when 4 guys came in for coffee and snacks. One mentioned a car at the far end of the lot, a new Subaru, no plates, with 2 guys arguing inside. My heart sank. I told them about the previous night. They said they'd noticed the car while pumping gas, and as they passed it, they overheard loud talking and saw one guy pointing toward the store. When they approached, the car reversed and sped off. They stayed with me for 20 minutes to make sure it didn't return, even topping off their coffee for free. I didn't see the car myself, but having multiple people warn me about it 2 nights in a row, parked where I couldn't see it, makes me think my paranoia is justified. I'm off for a few days, and I hope it doesn't show up again. My name is Daniel. I'm 29, and I work the overnight shift at a small, family-owned motel with 2 floors and about 25 rooms. I work 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and it's usually quiet, which suits me since I'm not much of a people person. The setup is simple: a front desk in the main office, some chairs, a coffee machine, and a brochure rack. A hallway leads to a back office with a couch, mini fridge, and a TV. A speaker dings when someone rings the bell at the front desk, so I usually hang out in the back, watching my laptop or napping. The motel is quiet at night, with just a few check-ins after midnight. The building has its usual sounds: creaks, the heater clicking, the front door buzzing when a guest uses their key card. But last fall, on a cold Tuesday night, something happened that changed how I see those sounds. Around 2 a.m., the bell rang. I walked to the front desk, but the lobby was empty. I looked outside. No cars, no headlights, nothing. I figured I'd imagined it and went back to the lounge. 10 minutes later, it rang again. I hurried to the desk, still empty. The hair on my neck stood up. I stepped outside, scanned the parking lot, and saw nothing but the guests' cars. I sat at the front desk thinking it might be a prank. After 15 minutes of silence, I relaxed, opened my laptop, and then the bell rang again. I snapped my head up. The lobby was empty. I checked the bathrooms, stepped outside, and shone my phone's flashlight around. Nothing. I sat back at the desk, dimmed the lights, and waited, listening to every sound: the ticking clock, the humming fridge, the creaking building. After 20 minutes, I started to doze off, thinking it was over. Then the bell rang again. This time, I saw it. A pale hand reached up from under the desk, pressing the bell right in front of me. I leapt up, the chair nearly tipping over, and bolted to the back office, locking the door. My heart pounded. The desk had little space underneath, but someone could crouch there. They'd been hiding just feet away, waiting. I checked the security monitors. The lobby feed showed the chair tipped over. Then, in the corner of the frame, a head poked out from behind the desk, eyes glinting at the camera. I backed away, dialed 911, and whispered that someone had broken in. The dispatcher told me to stay put. On the monitor, the person crawled out, tall, in a tight hoodie, hunched over. They paced the lobby, looked outside, and flipped through the brochure rack like they were killing time. Then they walked toward the hallway to the back office. The doorknob rattled once, slowly, then stopped. I couldn't speak. The dispatcher kept asking if I was safe. I watched the monitor as the man paced the lobby again. When police lights flashed in the parking lot, he bolted. The officers found a rock propping the front door open, but no sign of him. They figured he slipped out as they arrived. Now, every time the bell rings, I see that hand reaching up, calm as anything. I'll never look at that desk the same way again.